Northwestern North Carolina is a beautiful rolling area with the brushy mountains nearby and the Smoky Mountains in the distance. But the serenity of the area is about to be interrupted. The NASCAR Grand National drivers are ready to fire their engines for the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro. And the Grand Marshal of this event, Dick Tuggle, director of Northwestern Bank, about to give the command. And the command has been given. The drivers fire their engines, and we get set for the 6th stop on the Grand National NASCAR circuit for 1983. The crew chiefs, the drivers, prepare for this very long race, 400 laps around the .625-mile oval. There is Neil Bonnet, the pole sitter. Ricky Rudd with the thumbs up, indicating he's ready to go. Darrell Waltrip is also ready, and there's the car of Sterling Marlin, who will be competing in this afternoon's race. Now a look at the starting lineup for today's event. The Northwestern Bank 400, the 6th stop on the Winston Cup Trail. On the pole for today's race, Neil Bonnet from Hueytown, Alabama, car 75 in the Hodgson Chevrolet, alongside Joe Ruttman from Newell, North Carolina, in the Levi Garrett Buick. In the second row, Jeff Bodine, car number 88. Jeff from Pleasant Garden, North Carolina, in the Gatorade Pontiac. Starting in 4th position, car number 22, Bobby Allison from Hueytown, Alabama, in the Miller High Life Buick. In row number 5, Terry Labonte from Trinity, North Carolina, car number 44, the Budweiser Chevrolet. And alongside Mark Martin from Charlotte, North Carolina, in the ACM Equipment Sales Buick. Then Ricky Rudd, starting in 7th position in car number 3, the Piedmont Airline Chevrolet. Ricky hails from Chesapeake, Virginia. And Harry Gant, the most recent winner in NASCAR racing, car 33, the Skoll Bandit Buick. Bill Elliott will start in 9th position. Bill drives car number 9. He's from Dawsonville, Georgia, driving the Melling Oil Pumps Ford. And in 10th starting position, Darrell Waltrip, the defending Winston Cup champion. Franklin, Tennessee is the home. He's driving the Pepsi Challenger Chevrolet. In 11th starting position, Dale Earnhardt from Kannapolis, North Carolina, in the Wrangler Jeans Ford. And alongside him will be Ron Bouchard in car number 47, the Race Hill Farms Buick. Ron from Pittsburgh, Massachusetts. Starting in 13th position, car number 1, Lake Speed from Jackson, Mississippi, in the Uno Bullfrog Knits Chevrolet. And Tim Richmond, car number 27, in the Old Milwaukee Pontiac. Tim from Mooresville, North Carolina. Starting in 15th position, Kyle Petty from Randleman, North Carolina, in the 711 Pontiac, car number 7. And in 16th position, Dave Marcus from Avery's Creek, North Carolina, in the Hudson Chevrolet. Dave driving car number 71.
One of the highlights of every Grand National stock car season is who will be among the new crop of drivers that makes its way into the elite group of drivers that compete every week in the trail. There is a shot from right in front of the pace car as the field begins to rumble away, coming out of turn number 1, now approaching turn number 2. One of the exciting elements is those rookies that we were talking about, and the rookies who are among the top of the point collectors so far in the rookie race. They've all qualified together here today. In the black and red number 26 there, right in the center of your screen, that's Ronnie Hopkins, the young driver from Greenville, South Carolina. He's currently ranked 2nd in the point standings among rookies, and just to his right flank on the outside is Sterling Marlin, driver from Columbia, Tennessee, the highest ranking rookie so far in 1983. And right behind them in the white number 8 is a man who's got a later start than the others did in the quest for the Rookie of the Year title. He is the son of the former car owner and team manager of an Indianapolis team. That's Bobby Hillen Jr. He's a little bit behind, but he's got a lot of confidence, and he feels as though he's going to make a real run for the roses, if you will, in the rookie battle for 1983. I guess the most interesting aspect of where those 3 rookies are is in the row directly behind them is the familiar STP Dayglow Orange and Petty Blue of Richard. Richard Petty starts 23rd.
And Richard Petty, of course, winner of the last race that we televised for you on ESPN at Rockingham, North Carolina. But Richard Petty, in a rather disappointing qualifying performance here this weekend, starts in 23rd position. So 30 cars are lined up. The pace car is still on the racetrack. And we anticipated a green flag this time around. However, the pace car is staying out, so we will go at least one more lap under yellow before the green comes out. 400 laps around this 5/8 of a mile oval at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, the Northwestern Bank 400, part of Auto Racing 83 on ESPN.
The Speed Demons of 1983 continue to be the Speed Demons of this weekend at North Wilkesboro. In addition to Cale Yarborough, I guess the three fastest cars consistently all year have been Neil Bonnet, Joe Ruttman, and Jeff Bodine. And they were the three fastest qualifiers here at this basically 5/8 mile racetrack. So if you're looking for speed on a short track, and this is one of the fastest short tracks on the trail, looks like we're going to get it early on.
We check in with Dick Berggren just before the green flag.
There's going to be an awful lot of activity down here in the pits. We can anticipate a large number of pit stops, and in many, if not most of those pit stops, they're going to be changing tires. There's going to be a lot of excitement down here.
Well, it's said to be the most important factor, tires here in North Wilkesboro. And we will keep our eye on that and many other aspects as we get ready to go racing. Pace car pulls off of the racetrack. Neil Bonnet alongside Joe Ruttman. They lead down the front straightaway, and the green flag is out. The Northwestern Bank 400 underway. And it's Neil Bonnet and Joe Ruttman staying side by side as they go through turn number 2 and race down the backstretch. Now Joe Ruttman letting off the accelerator just a little bit and letting Neil Bonnet have the advantage as they come off of the 4th turn. Pole sitter Neil Bonnet will be shown as the leader of lap number 1 of 400. Ruttman running in 2nd position. Jeff Bodine is 3rd. Bobby Allison is running in 4th place, and Terry Labonte is 5th. There is Neil Bonnet in the number 75 Hodgson Chevrolet, the leader of the race, and Joe Ruttman right behind him in car number 98. Here's the completion of lap number 2. Still running in that order, Bonnet, Ruttman, and Jeff Bodine.
If you're an experienced NASCAR stock car racer, the first lap was probably exciting for you. You could tell Ruttman was going for the lead. Joe thought, I think, that he could stay on the outside of Bonnet down the backstretch and just holler into number 3 and 4 corner and maybe come out on top. Joe really did go for the lead. He did not want to run second, but Neil Bonnet had that inside starting position, and it's a real advantage at this place. Ruttman and Bodine come together momentarily there coming out of turn number 2.
Meanwhile, Neil Bonnet opening up about a 3 to 4 car length advantage over Joe Ruttman as another lap is clicked off. Single file traffic until you get back to about the 15th position or 10th position, and then we find Ricky Rudd and Ron Bouchard are in a battle. There they are. Ron Bouchard to the inside of the racetrack in car 47, and alongside Ricky Rudd, and Bill Elliott also making his felt as he goes down to the inside of Ricky Rudd in turn number 4. And there's some contact as they come out of turn number 4. Good racing. Bill Elliott, of course, has never driven on this racetrack. In fact, he had never seen the track until earlier this week. But Bill Elliott is certainly an experienced driver in the NASCAR Grand National Circuit. As a matter of fact, he has several high finishes this year. Bill Elliott has finished 2nd on 2 occasions this year in the Daytona 500 and in the Carolina 500.
Jeff Bodine, there you see him on the right-hand side of your screen going down the backstretch. It's uphill here, has moved into 2nd position. Ruttman, by the way, has backed up. He's running now in 5th position. Bodine runs 2nd. The guy on the move, by the way, is Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip, as we look at the leader, Neil Bonnet, is closing in on the guys who we have been watching run in the first 3 positions since the green flag dropped.
There is Darrell Waltrip, and he is shown in 6th position at this time. And he is pulling up very close to the rear bumper of Joe Ruttman as the cars swing out of turn number 4 down the main straightaway. Darrell Waltrip going to the inside of Joe Ruttman, trying to take over 5th position. He moves alongside Joe Ruttman in turn number 2. They go down the backstretch side by side. And going into turn number 3, Darrell Waltrip picks up the position and moves into 5th place. Darrell Waltrip from Franklin, Tennessee, looking for his first victory on the 1983 Winston Cup Trail. And there is no team that has worked harder this year than the Junior Johnson Darrell Waltrip team in trying to find that victory.
And Darrell himself has been very active, not only driving this week, but working on the car. He's had quite a hand involved in trying to find the right setup. They were very disappointed with the qualifying speed they had come up with, and they worked as hard as anybody in the last 24 hours coming up with extra miles per hour and extra horsepower. And if his early race showing here is any indication as to how successful they were, I'll tell you, they may have been very successful. Remember, Waltrip knows this place almost as well as Junior Johnson.
Well, the most recent winner on the NASCAR Winston Cup Trail, Harry Gant, right now he is pursuing Mark Martin in car number 2, and also in this race for 5th, 6th, and 7th position as they go down the backstretch is Joe Ruttman, who is falling behind. Mark Martin, Harry Gant, and Joe Ruttman here for 5th, 6th, and 7th position.
Mark Martin with a brand new sponsor on the nose of the car, the ACM Equipment Sales Company. As we have a
crash. Kyle Petty has crashed up in turn number 3, bringing out the first caution flag of the afternoon. Kyle Petty's car resting at the outside retaining wall. However, he has been able to get it going, and now Sterling Marlin also comes into the pits with some damage to that car. There's Sterling Marlin, car number 17. Kyle Petty, meanwhile, has gotten going again. He's down in turn number 1, but smoke is pouring from that race car.
There's Marlin with heavy smoke, and there's a replay of the last part of this. Kyle Petty out of control, spinning, backing up toward the outer retaining wall, and he is T-boned by Dick Brooks, also involved, and Slick Johnson sliding by and just barely missing the Dick Brooks car.
So 11 laps have been completed, and Kyle Petty stays out on the racetrack for right now, but he's headed for the pit area to see if sheet metal repair can be made to that car. So we're under our first caution here in the Northwestern Bank 400. More auto racing in just a moment.
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
All the activity is in Kyle Petty's pit right now. Boy, has he got himself a barrel full of trouble. They've cut most of the left front fender off with an air chisel. He's got a bent oil line. This guy's really in trouble. It's not been a good pit stop. He's already down a lap as well. He's coming back in as well.
Well, there were 3 cars involved in this incident up in turn number 3. In addition to Kyle Petty, Sterling Marlin also involved, and Dick Brooks. Dick Brooks is still in the pit area, as is Sterling Marlin, and crews are doing work on both of those cars. Kyle Petty, however, out there on the racetrack in that 711 Pontiac.
Slick Johnson, I don't know if he made contact or not, but we saw him scoot by in our replay. He came very close to making contact with Dick Brooks. He did spend some time in the pits during this caution flag, but I believe that Slick did get back out without losing a lap.
All right, we checked the first 8 positions. Neil Bonnet is the leader. Jeff Bodine is running 2nd. Bobby Allison is 3rd, and Terry Labonte is 4th. In 5th position, Darrell Waltrip. 6th is Mark Martin. 7th, Harry Gant, and 8th is Joe Ruttman. Kyle Petty into the pit area once again, and work being done on that car. The crew changing the rubber on the left side of the car, and also the hood is up. In fact, the hood is being taken off of that car. So Kyle Petty definitely does have trouble here as he prepares to pull back out on the racetrack.
In the blue and red STP jacket, Mike Beam, Kyle Petty's good friend and crew chief, one of the youngest crew chiefs in the business, and certainly somebody with a great future in front of him. Going out sans hood this time around. Obviously, they plan on doing some more work a little later on. Now, you've got to start the race with the hood on, but if an accident takes it off, usually you're allowed to continue to run this way.
Well, next Saturday night, Saturday, April 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as we see that Tim Richmond is getting a push from Joe Milliken. That's good sportsmanship. Tim is able to go into the pit area after a helpful push from Joe Milliken.
eHarmony has a lot of
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Recapping a little bit of what's been happening here, Neil Bonnet has been dominating this race. Ricky Rudd, who started up near the front, has been dropping off the pace just a little bit. Ricky has dropped down to 10th. Richard Petty, those of you who are Petty fans, and there are a couple of you out there. There's Tim Richmond in the pit area after that helpful nudging along by Joe Milliken. Richard Petty, who started this race in 23rd, has moved up to 15th. So Petty has improved himself by 8 positions.
Well, we don't know what Tim Richmond's problem is. Perhaps we can get an idea from Dick Berggren.
The basic problem is his engine is not running. They've got the distributor cap off it, and they're working very hard on the distributor area, so it's perhaps an electrical problem. Richmond has not had a particularly good time here this week. He's had a lot of trouble trying to make this car handle, and now it's engine trouble.
Well, Tim Richmond, of course, won the pole position for the most recent NASCAR race at Darlington International Raceway, the Trans-South 500, and he blew an engine on the first lap and had to drop out of the race, and now more problems for the Tim Richmond crew. We are back to racing. The green comes out once again, and Neil Bonnet continues to dominate the field here at North Wilkesboro. Jeff Bodine in second position. Bobby Allison is third. Running in fourth place is Terry Labonte. Fifth is Darrell Waltrip. In sixth place, Mark Martin. Seventh is Harry Gant. Eighth is Ricky Rudd. Running in ninth position is Dale Earnhardt. And 10th is Joe Ruttman.
There's Bonnet continuing to blaze the trail. Watch from coming off the fourth turn now down the front stretch. We've got an advantage shot for you right underneath the starter stand, which you'll see in a couple of seconds here. If you ever wondered, gee, what does an average of 110 miles an hour on a short track look like? It sounds pretty slow compared to the 200s at Talladega and Darlington, and as well as, or make that Daytona. But I'll tell you, at 140 or 150 miles per hour in the front stretch, they whiz by pretty quick. You really do get an idea of just how much on the ragged edge these guys are, even though they're only averaging 110 miles an hour or thereabouts.
The leader, Neil Bonnet's best finish this year was a second at Atlanta. He finished third at the Richmond 400, and he finished seventh in the most recent race at Darlington. Here is a race between Dale Earnhardt in car number 15 and Ricky Rudd in number 3 as they flash down the main straightaway.
Earnhardt was on the outside a couple of laps to go, and that's not really the very best place to pass on this racetrack. It's a handling racetrack. Right now he runs in 8th position, putting Ricky, of course, in 9th. But most of the top drivers, when they're trying to improve position racing against competitors at approximately their own speed or the same speed, they'll try to nudge down to the inside and nestle in between the guy right in front of them and the inside curb, which goes around this racetrack as far as first, second, third, fourth turn in the backstretch. Earnhardt was on the outside a few laps ago, and now he's tucked her back down to the inside lane. They'll try to pass right there coming out of the fourth turn often. The front stretch is downhill, and you can really get some extra RPMs coming down the front chute.
While we watch Dale Earnhardt on the racetrack, we'll give you an update from the pit area. There are 4 cars in the pits. Sterling Marlin is still in there, so is Dick Brooks, Tim Richmond, and Kyle Petty. All 4 of those cars are on pit road and receiving service. Dale Earnhardt, car number 15, is right now in 7th position as the lead continues to be held by Neil Bonnet in car number 75.
Bonnet leads, Bodine runs second. All of the favorites are still out on the racetrack. The average speed only 68 miles per hour. Slowed, of course, by those several caution flags lap. Allison is third, Labonte fourth, Waltrip fifth, Gant is sixth, Mark Martin is seventh. Earnhardt is 8th, Ricky Rudd is 9th, Joe Ruttman has slipped to 10th, Elliott continues to hold on to run 11th. Richard Petty has moved up to 12th, Blake Speed is 13th, Ron Bouchard is 14th, and Dave Marcus runs 15th. That is the upper half of the field, and they have kind of separated themselves from the other tail enders.
Well, Dale Earnhardt now going to the inside of Mark Martin in turn number 3 and taking over 7th position, and a spin, or nearly a spin. A great job of driving there by Mark Martin and Ricky Rudd to keep those cars from colliding, and Rudd has a flat tire.
Ricky Rudd tried to sneak underneath Mark Martin. He tried to pull the same move that Earnhardt made. Earnhardt had just gone underneath. Ricky goes in, and Mark says, no, I don't want that. And Martin is out of control at that point, does an excellent job of saving the car, bringing it back. Unfortunately for Ricky, it punched a hole in the right front tire.
Well, we had an opportunity to talk with Dale Earnhardt a little bit earlier about the competition here at North Wilkesboro and all the bumping and banging that goes on out there.
It's usually after the race. You know, on the track, half-mile track, we get close and rub a little. Usually it doesn't get too serious unless it's close to the end and somebody thinks they run over somebody intentionally. It gets pretty heated sometimes, but usually it's pretty good shape.
See how well you know your NASCAR history with this classic trivia question. In 1983, which driver won 6 races but did not earn a single pole position? Was it Neil Bonnet, Cale Yarborough, Bobby Allison, or Benny Parsons? Stay with us. We'll have the answer later in the race. The 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 continues right here on ESPN Classic.
There is Mark Martin in car number 2, who did a tremendous job of saving that car.
Ricky Rudd out on the racetrack. He lost at least 1, maybe 2 laps. Now he runs right up front with the leaders. Remember, the leader is Neil Bonnet. He's led since the green flag dropped. Bob, it brings up the subject of the right-of-way on a short half-mile or 5/8 mile racetrack. And most of the drivers will tell you that there's a little more that's allowed in terms of being more rough, in terms of being more aggressive when you're being passed, not the one doing the passing. And the right-of-way is not as well defined on a short track as it is a big track. And most observers would probably look at that situation with Rudd and Martin as one of those incidents that occurs in racing. Ricky, however, and Mark Martin, they have been together in 2 of the last 3 races, now making 3 races in a row. They have been racing very close, and there have been some words between the 2 of them, but on a short track like this, more often than not, an incident like that is just one of those things that happens.
There you see the interval between first and second position as Neil Bonnet goes high in turn number 3 to pass Tommy Gale. Meanwhile, we watch 98 Joe Ruttman and 43 Richard Petty on the racetrack. Richard Petty, the king of NASCAR stock car competition from Randleman, North Carolina, driving the familiar STP Pontiac. And Dale Earnhardt, who we had noticed moving up nicely in the past few laps, now is beginning to show some signs of smoke from the rear end of that car. We'll watch Dale to see if he comes in for a stop, but there's heavy smoke now pouring as he comes down the main straightaway.
The black flag comes out for Dale Earnhardt. Recall earlier this year, Dale was running in the Busch Clash at Daytona when he chose to ignore the black flag. Of course, the situation was a little different there. He was up front, and in this particular race, Dale's now running in the top 10. He's firmly entrenched there. The black flag will come out a second time for Earnhardt this time around. Heavy smoke coming from underneath a car and a driver combination, incidentally, that has led at least 1 lap of all 5 of the previous races on the Winston Cup Trail for 1983.
So we'll see if Dale Earnhardt heeds the black flag this time around. Yes, he is. He's coming into the pit area. So with Neil Bonnet leading, we'll be right back after these messages.
Thanks for coming over.
Night baseball.
You're watching the 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
We promised that the pits were going to be a busy place today. We promised that the pits were going to be a busy place today, but we hadn't counted on them being quite this busy. Kyle Petty is out of his car in street clothes, and he is done for the day. Dale Earnhardt, who is just black flag, has just been pulled behind the wall. Up to you guys.
All right, and here's the battle for third place, and this battle is a heated one. It's been going on for several laps as Darrell Waltrip is trying everything he can to pass Bobby Allison for third position. Waltrip moving to the inside now in turn number 1 as there are no cars ahead of them. And he's able to maneuver a little bit. They're virtually side by side down the backstrip. Waltrip punches the button going into 3, takes over the position, and Darrell Waltrip has moved into third position behind Jeff Bodine and the leader, Neil Bonnet.
And that was not easy work. I want to tell you, Waltrip worked Bobby Allison over for at least 10 or 12 laps. He was trying high, had him low, almost had him trapped in traffic one time when they came up on the slower moving Bobby Hillin Jr. out of Midland, Texas. But Bobby Allison, the experienced driver that he is, was able to get out of that one. But coming off the 4th turn 2 laps ago, you saw Allison drift just a little higher than what he should have, which gave Waltrip an opportunity to sneak down on the inside. Waltrip was able to hold that inside line just above the curb around turns 1 and 2, and then going down the backstretch. We've had a hat blow out of the grandstand down to the front stretch. Doubt that they'll throw a caution flag for that, but we got a hat blown down the front stretch here. Anyway, Waltrip was able to hold the line going down the backstretch, and then they got into the high-speed turns 3 and 4. You can stay on the throttle pretty good there because it's just a little bit of an uphill incline. He was able to get by Bobby. Bobby holding on, though, as they go around Buddy Arrington.
Waltrip, the defending champion of this race, almost had a victory in his pocket at Darlington last week. However, Harry Gant took over the lead with a couple of laps to go and went on to win. Darrell Waltrip and the Pepsi Challenger looking for win number 1 in 1983 here this afternoon. And that Pepsi Chevrolet appears to be running well, at least here in the early stages of this event.
Bobby really is. There is Waltrip in the yellow car. Rick McRae out of California is right between him, and Rick moves over to allow Waltrip to go by. Waltrip moving in rapidly on Bodine, talking about reeling somebody in. Waltrip's got that on an automatic reel. He is coming in like gangbusters on Bodine, and there's the leader, Bonnet. You can see how rapidly Waltrip is closing.
So there are the first 3 positions. The white number 75 driven by Neil Bonnet, the Gatorade number 88 with Jeff Bodine, and then the Pepsi Challenger Darrell Waltrip. Your first 3 positions. Out in turn number 2, Neil Bonnet goes high to pass D.K. Ulrich in the number 6 car. They go into turn number 3, and Bodine now also looking to pass Ulrich.
Bonnet has opened up about a 4 or 5 car length difference between himself and Bodine, the second running car, but Neil got a pretty good hole shot getting around D.K. Ulrich in that black 6 you just saw go out of the screen. Bodine continues to hold off Waltrip. Let's see if Waltrip goes after the same move on Bodine that he used on Allison. Right here is what he'll try. He'll try to get underneath Bodine. Bodine tucks her in real tight. Coming out of turn number 4 and does not give Darrell quite enough room. So Darrell's going to look high. Now, I'll tell you one thing. If Waltrip gets around the high side of Bodine, you know he's super strong.
Well, every race, you just think that things are going to improve for Darrell Waltrip, a second place last week. Maybe things will, but so far the year hasn't gone your way, has it, Darrell?
Yeah, but it hadn't been that bad. You know, we've only had 5 races, and we finished very well in 2 of them. We had Darlington 1 last week, and we had a 3rd place finish at Rockingham. And so we've fallen out of 3 races. We usually fall out of 5 or 6 races in a season. We usually do it in the first half of the year. So we're not in that bad a shape. Coming into this race last year, I had won 1 race. That was Atlanta, a rain-shortened race. I won by an inch. So we're not that far behind last year, and we're only 216 points behind in the Winston Cup championship battle. So from that standpoint of view, I think it sort of tells you about the competition. We've only finished 2 races well, and we're only 216 points behind in the Winston Cup chase. So nobody at this point has really been that outstanding as far as consistency is concerned.
Well, I think Darrell's absolutely right. Perhaps we expect too much from him because of his outstanding performances the past 2 years. There's a long way to go in this 83 season, and I'm sure Darrell Waltrip is going to be right up front when the points are counted. Well, Kyle Petty, second-generation driver from Randall, North Carolina, has called it quits for the afternoon. He is with Dick Berkman.
Kyle, what caused the crash that caused the end of your afternoon so early?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things in racing. I think Daddy had come up behind me and went around me, and then he called Tim Richmond, and he started around Tim, and when we went in the corner up there, he got under Tim, and I thought Tim would stay out because he had him pushed up, but in the middle of the corner, Tim cut back across the racetrack and didn't know I was there, and I run up through the dirt, and when I spun, then Brooks ran into me and knocked the toe in all out of it, and really what happened, it pinched the oil line, we ended up blowing the motor.
So you're going to spend the afternoon watching Dad?
Yeah, watch the rest of them. I hope he wins it.
Kyle Petty's best finish in a Winston Cup race, second in 1982. Into the pits comes Ricky Rudd in car number 3, and again the flat tire is bothering that car. You can see the right front is flattened once again. It was after an incident up in turn number 3 a little earlier.
He had been running very competitively. He had started, he came back out on the racetrack just in front of Neil Bonnet. He was pulling away. He had only lost 1 lap when he pitted the last time, and Rudd really had an opportunity to get back into this race. It's 400 laps. We're not even a quarter of the way into it yet. But apparently the body was damaged ever so slightly. May well have been just touching that right front tire, and it made it go flat again. But this one really set back Ricky for the rest of the day.
Ricky's best finish in a race this year, a 4th last weekend at Darlington. Other than that, his best finish was a 6th in the Carolina 500 that we televised for you at Rockingham. Back out on the racetrack, Ricky Rudd. New 4th place competitor right now is Harry Gant in car number 33. He has been able to pass Bobby Allison, and Ricky Rudd has come in contact with the wall in turn number 4, gets the car to the pit area, but that car now has extensive damage to the right front, and Ricky Rudd, it looks like, is going to be finished for the day. The second caution period of the afternoon comes out. Ricky Rudd pulls his car to the pit area.
Well, it's difficult to assess what might have happened. Ricky out there trying to gain ground. He lost probably his second, maybe his third lap, but this one looks pretty terminal, I'll tell you. I do believe they had some damage to the front end of that car that perhaps they never even found or were not able to solve after that first banging incident with Mark Martin up there in turn number 3. But this one looks like a real serious problem, where the other two were basically just flat tires, as well as, or at least as far as we can see visually from here to booth. And all the leaders are pitting. Everybody coming into pit row.
And we have completed 64 laps, and a lot of pit activity is underway. On the top of your screen, Jeff Bodine, second position. And on the bottom, the leader of the race, Neil Bonnet. We'll see how the crews compare here as far as speed is concerned and what they do to the cars. The crew's changing rubber on the right side now. Now the Neil Bonnet crew moves to the left side of the car, and so does Jeff Bodine's Gatorade team. Tires being changed on the left side of Neil Bonnet's car, on the rear of your screen. Fuel has already been put in Bonnet's car. He's away, and so is Jeff Bodine. So they came out of the pits at almost the same time, Larry. Good stops for Jeff Bodine and Neil Bonnet.
Heavy traffic coming out, though, and really losing some ground was Bonnet.
Down to the pit area, and Dick Berggren.
Well, it certainly appears as if Ricky Rudd is out for the day. The second tire, at least, was a cut tire. It appeared to have been cut by contact with something, either his own car, more likely another car, because it was cut on the outside. He hit the wall, a good solid thump on the right front corner. The right front corner is all pushed back. Ricky is out of the car, and they're preparing to move it back and out of harm's way.
Several other pit stops being made as we watch the
we're going to try
on the Ricky Rudd car. Richard Petty is in, so is Ron Bouchard, Joe Ruttman, Mark Martin in, Rick McRae, all these drivers now leaving the pits after some fuel and fresh rubber. We'll be back with more action from the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, as we bring you the sixth stop on the NASCAR trail live on ESPN.
You're watching the 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
All right, and the green flag is about to come out once again, and racing resuming. Jeff Bodine from Pleasant Garden, North Carolina, leads this race at this point. All of the drivers came in for pit stops during this caution period, so everybody full of fuel and some fresh rubber on the car. Lake Speed running in second position, and Harry Gant is third. They come off of turn number 4. Jeff Bodine showing the way in the Gatorade Pontiac.
Bodine goes by. You see that clump of cars to the right-hand side of the screen that's being paced right now by Lake Speed. Harry Gant right behind him, then Waltrip, then Allison, then Bonnet going to the high side of Tim Richmond. Richmond has moved down low in a very gentlemanly fashion. After they got out of the throttle a little bit and allowed that train to go by. Now to the inside goes Harry Gant, working on Lake Speed, who's not run up front all that often.
Harry Gant trying to take over second position here on the backstretch. Heading into turn number 3, he gets the job accomplished. Harry Gant is now second. Darrell Waltrip now alongside Lake Speed. He moves into third place. Bobby Allison now is also looking to go around Lake Speed, and he does. So Lake Speed falls from second to fifth in about a half a lap.
Speed may be on the verge, however, of his best year ever. Remember, he's in that bright red Uno sponsored number 1. They've also picked up an associate sponsor, the Bullfrog Knits people. Speed has been in the top 10 consistently this year. He seems to be just a little better on the super big race tracks than he is in the smaller tracks. And look what else has popped up on the right-hand side of the screen.
Why, it's the familiar STP Pontiac.
His Richard, what's that name again, Bob?
Richard Petty has moved into 7th position, and he goes to the inside here on the main straightaway of Lake Speed. Watch him go into turn number 1. Richard Petty side by side with Lake Speed, and he gets the job done. So now Richard Petty picks up a position. 13 cars still running on the lead lap.
Speed's best finish in his career took place about a month ago at Rockingham when he finished 4th in another ESPN televised race. He was 25th at Daytona earlier this year. That 4th at Rockingham not only is best obviously this year, but as we mentioned in his career. He is currently 11th in the point standings, and there is the king himself, the all-time leading winner here at North Wilkesboro and the all-time leading winner of this race. But then again, he is at a lot of other racetracks and a lot of other races also.
Richard Petty, car number 43, right ahead of Lake Speed in car number 1. Crew chief on the Lake Speed car, Haas Ellington. And in the pit area, here is Dick Bergeron.
I'm with Haas Ellington in the pit area. Haas, it seems as if you're running pretty well.
Well, right now we're running real good. Motion's out right now. We're running real good. We've got a little bit of push in the car, but other than that, we're okay. So I just think we just stay in there and run good all day. We'll be all right. And I'd like to say happy anniversary to my wife back home. I wish I was there with her.
Okay, we've got action on the racetrack.
And Bill Elliott has spun down the backstretch, the car on the inside grass. Bill is taking off the helmet and is stepping out of the car. So Bill Elliott, who was one of our hopefuls as far as a victory here this afternoon, is no longer in the competition. His best finish this year was a second position. In fact, he has finished second on 2 occasions this year. And he would like very much to find the victory. The second place finishes coming at Daytona and also at Rockingham.
Well, Elliott is the second leading money winner on the trail for 1983, trailing only Cale Yarborough. He also has the most top 5 finishes. He's been doing very well, and a lot of people are looking at him as a possible candidate for champion this year.
Well, he's second in the point standings at this time. Leading the race is Jeff Bodine. Second is Waltrip. Third, Allison. And fourth is Harry Gant.
In the program, we asked you this classic trivia question. In 1983, which driver won 6 races but did not earn a single pole position? Was it Neil Bonnet, Cale Yarborough, Bobby Allison, or Benny Parsons? The answer, 2 drivers won 6 races that year, Darrell Waltrip and Bobby Allison. But Waltrip took 7 poles that year. Allison didn't win any. Therefore, the answer is C, Bobby Allison. Still ahead, 1983, the year in pop culture, from Cabbage Patch Kids to a galaxy far, far away. Stay with us.
Well, we mentioned that Bill Elliott was second in the point standings at this time. Let's take a look at the other drivers and where they stand at this point in the season. The leader is Neil Bonnet with 735 points. Bill Elliott with 728. Third is Bobby Allison with 692. Harry Gant has 677 points, and Joe Ruttman, who led for a while, is at 675. Sixth in the point standings, Cale Yarborough, who has won twice, with 658. Ricky Rudd with 629. Richard Petty with 624. Mark Martin with 616 points, and Buddy Baker is 10th in the point standings with 603. Now there is Neil Bonnet, who is a $1 million winner in NASCAR Grand National competition, and one of the other recent entrants into that category, Buddy Arrington. And we had an opportunity to talk with Buddy about auto racing and his career and the fact that he now is listed among those who have won $1 million.
Well, Buddy, you know, you've always driven Imperials. I guess the lifestyle now finally matches the pocketbook. You're a millionaire now.
I knew you was going to say that. I knew it. Well, yeah, I guess you're right. That Imperial, they always kidding about the air conditioning, the power steering, all this fancy stuff, you know. But all in all jokes aside, the Imperial turned out to be a real good car for Super Speedway. And that's the only place we use it. We use a Dodge at the rest of the racetracks.
$1 million in winnings over your career sounds like a lot of money to the people on the outside.
It really does, but you scatter that $1 million out over 18 to 20 years, and it ain't no big figure, not really, but I would say it's been a lot more than $1 million added to that $1 million to make it $1 million. So it ain't a deal where people think, well, he's took in $1 million, he's made $1 million. It's just like they used to think years ago when you sold gas. For an instant, I was in the gas business, and they thought when they paid 15 cents for a gallon of gas, you know, back then, that you made 15 cents. But it was tighter then than it is now, you know, dollars for dollars.
You're telling us that $1 million, there's no profit there.
None whatsoever.
Buddy Arrington finished 7th in point standings last year and is 17th in the points battle this year. On the racetrack, the battle for the lead is going on. Jeff Bodine is the leader. Darrell Waltrip running in 2nd position. Bobby Allison is 3rd. Harry Gant 4th. And Neil Bonnet is in 5th place as they come down to complete another lap, and that is lap number 90. 90 laps have been completed. 400 will make up this event.
You never really know what's going on in the minds of a race driver, particularly before the halfway mark of a race, and really right up until about the three-quarter mark, it's difficult to ascertain what might be going on. I was about to say that I would be surprised to not see Darrell Waltrip go for the lead, but then kind of thought about it myself again, and I'm just wondering if he might be content just to stay right there behind Bodine. Often, in the early stages of a race, the best place to be if you're the fastest car is nestled down in second or third position. It gives you a little more time to anticipate what might happen in traffic. Plus, you kind of worry the guy who's leading when you're right on the back bumper like that. But with the season that Darrell's had and the fact that everybody's been talking about, oh, gee, it's been a bad year, I thought Darrell might try to show us a little bit. But no, the old Darrell Waltrip, the guy who has won so many races in the last couple of years, he's still there. He's biding his time, and I really believe there's something left in that race car. He showed more speed than he's showing right now to get to where he is. And he could be playing a little bit of cat and mouse. Maybe he's lost a little bit of speed, but I doubt it. I have a feeling that Mr. Waltrip is exactly where he wants to be right now.
There are 3 drivers who have led at least one lap in every race this year: Jeff Bodine, Neil Bonnet, and Dale Earnhardt.
Do you take prescription medications? Are you spending money?
Watching the 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Bill Elliott, what's happened to your race car?
Something caught on fire under the dash and it started burning, and then when I backed off, somebody hit me in the back and I spun out.
Is there any chance you can get back in this race?
What? I couldn't hear you.
Is there any chance you can get back in this race?
We're going to try to see what the problem was and get back in the race.
Obviously, it's been a tough introduction to short track racing for you.
Believe me, it has.
Bill Elliott.
As we indicated, Bill taking part in his first short track race here this weekend, was doing a fine job until trouble began. Now are the first 3: Jeff Bodine, Darrell Waltrip, and Bobby Allison.
And moving up to pass Ronnie Thomas, Ronnie in the Advanced Auto Special. The young driver's a former Rookie of the Year on this trail, who's in the midst of that long, hard struggle it takes to get to the top. You never know who is going to make it and who's not going to make it. There are a lot who will tell you. And among them, apparently, is Junior Johnson, who thinks that this guy has the capability and the potential of being a front runner someday. Ronnie, of course, in a team right now that he put together himself over the winter months after borrowing a great deal of money, was 78 when he was the Rookie of the Year. His best finish so far in 1983 was at Daytona when he came home in 17th position. He has, by the way, over 500 members of a brand new fan club.
Neil Bonnet has moved into 4th position. There he is in car number 75. Neil Bonnet, an early leader in this race, the pole sitter, has moved back up into 4th place. Running 5th now is Harry Gant. 6th is Richard Petty. And 7th position belongs to Joe Ruttman. Neil Bonnet in the number 75 Hodgson Chevrolet. Neil hailing from Hueytown, Alabama. Right ahead of him, another resident of Hueytown, Bobby Allison, car number 22.
Well, the mentor and the student, but I think those 2 differences, at least in title, have kind of blended together. Now we have Ronnie Hopkins going slow. The caution flag coming out. Hopkins in the infield grass coming out of turn number 2.
Apparently he spun over there in turn number 2, bringing out another caution. And that's going to mean more pit stops for us as Bobby Allison and Harry Gant head for the pit area. There's Ronnie Hopkins, the leading Rookie of the Year candidate. Here's a stop by Bobby Allison now, and also Harry Gant.
Well, Allison made a very rapid decision. He came off the 4th turn. I think he caught the other leaders by surprise. I think that Bodine and Waltrip had no idea that he was planning on pitting. Bobby happened to be right at the right place. Here comes Bodine and Waltrip in now, but what will happen when we go green again, Allison is likely to be in the lead.
Well, we're more than a 4th finished with this race here today. Here is Jeff Bodine pulling the Gatorade car into his pit area, and the crew going to work on it. Right behind him is Darrell Waltrip. We'll kind of keep an eye on both of these to see how well their crews do. Richard Petty is also in the pit, so is Ron Bouchard and Tim Richmond and the number 1 of Lake Speed.
For Tim Richmond, the struggle continues. This former super modified driver, former Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, is now being reported through the radios that he is officially out of this race. A brand new team for 1983. They're having a difficult time getting the bird to flutter out of the nest and start to fly on its own.
Well, Darrell Waltrip got out well ahead of Jeff Bodine. There is Jeff down the backstretch, having completed his pit stop. But Darrell Waltrip is going to be placed ahead of Jeff Bodine. There is Ronnie Hopkins in car number 26. Ronnie from Greenville, South Carolina, in the Food Country USA Chevrolet. The driver who caused the most recent yellow caution to come out over the Speedway, spinning in turn number 2. Well, we have completed a total of 102 laps, and we'll have more racing for you in the Northwestern Bank 400 in just a moment.
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Darrell Waltrip passed Neil Bonnet for the lead during lap 124. Then on lap 170, Mark Martin was forced out of the race after his car got stuck in 4th gear and broke a rear end line. During that caution, Harry Gant inched out of the pits just seconds ahead of Waltrip, and now he has the lead as we return to the 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 on ESPN Classic.
Here is Neil Bonnet, the third-place competitor here this afternoon. Neil Bonnet to number 75, leading this race is Harry Gant, and running in second position is Darrell Waltrip. In about a 9 or 10 car length interval before we get back to Neil Bonnet. And then running in 4th position is Bobby Allison. Tim Richmond, who won a pole position last week at Darlington, is out of this race. He's with Dick.
Tim, what do you make of the race so far?
I tell you what, I just been up watching it, and it's one of the best short track races I've seen. Darrell took off and pulled a lead there for a while, but Harry was catching him. And the thing of it was, Harry hadn't changed 4 tires like Darrell had, and I tell you, Bobby Allison's out there playing a cat and mouse game too. He's trying every line on this racetrack, and I think it's going to come down between Bobby and probably Darrell, maybe Harry, but Bobby's playing a cat and mouse game out there, so I'd watch Bobby for a while.
Tim Richmond says keep your eye on Bobby Allison.
All right, now the race is between Harry Gant and Darrell Waltrip. They come off of turn number 4. Tommy Gale alongside as they pass him easily and go into turn number 1. But Darrell Waltrip would like very much to get around Harry Gant and go back into the lead. He's tried several different grooves on this racetrack, but so far in the last few laps has been unable to go into the lead and pass Harry Gant.
Harry Gant with 3 career victories. He has won on a 1.5-mile racetrack. He won at the 3rd mile at Martinsville, and of course winning at Darlington on that most unusual racetrack, the Super Speedway there last week. And right behind him, the man who has been the kingpin for the past 2 seasons in Grand National Stock Car Racing. With his victories of 1982, he moved into 6th place on the all-time victory parade. He now has 51 career wins. Darrell Waltrip does. Richard Petty still leads. Waltrip looks to the inside of the Skoal Bandit, heading down the back chute, but the Pepsi Challenger doesn't have quite enough room as he has to get out of the throttle as they approach the slower-moving Joe Milliken, who's put together a team for the racing here at North Wilkesboro this weekend. David Pearson continues to rank as the 2nd leading winner of all time, followed by Cale Yarborough and Bobby Allison, although Cale and Bobby are in a virtual tie for 3rd.
Joe Milliken, whom they just went around, is driving in his first race of 1983. Competed in several races last year, but this is his first of the 1983 racing season. Down the front stretch they come. It's still Harry Gant leading Darrell Waltrip. 3rd position is Neil Bonnet, and 4th, 5th, and 6th, the good race among Bobby Allison, Jeff Bodine, and Joe Ruttman. Now Darrell Waltrip looking to the inside in turn number 4, off of the turn onto the straightaway, and Darrell Waltrip edges ahead. He had about a half a car length advantage as they crossed the start-finish line, and Darrell Waltrip moves back into the lead.
So Waltrip takes over once again in his short track Junior Johnson machine. Hand off the steering wheel for just a second going down the backstretch after that pass of Harry Gant. Maybe making an adjustment to the goggles, or perhaps wiping a little bit of perspiration from underneath that point on the face when the goggles meet the face. The rest of the NASCAR drivers, of course, use open face helmets. And Darrell Waltrip is back out front one more time, a place where he's been just a few times before, particularly here in North Wilkesboro.
Harry Gant working on Darrell Waltrip. It's a good battle for the lead. Waltrip now is standing a chance of losing that position. Harry Gant got down to the inside, but Darrell able to stave off the challenge. So good racing here for first place between Darrell Waltrip and Harry Gant.
These short tracks are the places where Waltrip has really been tough.
Well, we talked to Tim Richmond a little bit earlier, and he expressed his disappointment of being out of the race. I'll tell you, when you come to a racetrack and prepare your car for the action, it's work all the time, or is it?
Hey, Richmond, pretty tense, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty serious business we're here, you know, trying to make a race car go fast.
Yeah, what's going on in your mind? I can see you're really tensed up while you're sitting here. A lot of grinding going on inside, huh?
Really, how I can spend this quarter right here, and how long is it going to take me to get a sunburn sitting here in this chair is the main.
Is it possible that maybe that's your new sponsor, McDonald's? You're carrying that around because you want to be a quarter pounder?
Well, that could be. You never know, but I'm really worried that I'm not going to get a suntan quick enough.
ESPN bringing you live coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro. The leader, Darrell Waltrip, second place, Harry Gant.
It's time now for a quick pit stop down memory lane. The Cabbage Patch Kid was the must-have holiday gift and made for packed toy stores everywhere. MASH ended its 11-year, 14 Emmy run with the largest audience ever to watch a single television show. Madonna released her debut album, simply titled Madonna. And in a galaxy far, far away, Return of the Jedi earned over $191 million at the box office. Let's return to our blockbuster, the 1983 Northwestern Bank 400, here on ESPN Classic.
No change in the positions while we were away. We're halfway through this 400-lap race, and Darrell Waltrip is leading with Harry Gant second. While we were away, however, Joe Ruttman, who had been running in the top 10, had a flat tire on the right rear of the car and came in to change it.
Ruttman was running near Jeff Bodine, who continues to stay on the lead lap, as does Terry Labonte and Richard Petty, and Lake Speed doing a fine job today. Of course, the leaders, Waltrip and Gant, with Neil Bonnet up there very competitively. Bobby Allison runs in fourth position.
And let's go down to the pit area, and Dick Berggren, who's in the Joe Ruttman pit.
Here's the tire that went flat, and there's the reason that it went flat. Joe Ruttman obviously made contact with something, cutting the sidewall of the tire. You'll notice the tire is completely flat. Unlike the tires we ordinarily see on super speedways, there are no inner liners on these tires. That means when they go flat, all the air goes out at once, and you got a real serious problem.
Well, there has been a lot of bumping and banging going on out there this afternoon as we watch the cars come down the straightaway. Virtually no car has escaped some paint trading with some other car.
Well, that's for sure, Bob. Everybody that we look up and down the line has got tire marks on the side. Interestingly enough, maybe the cleanest car out there is that yellow and white red numeral 11.
The average speed at the halfway point, 84.729 miles an hour.
We've begun to comment about the importance of the short tracks as we look at Waltrip, who again continues to lead. Last year, en route to his second consecutive championship, Waltrip won 7 of the 10 short track races. Now, we're not saying 7 of the 10 that he entered. We're saying 7 of all the short track races that were conducted on the Grand National Trail a year ago. He won only 5 times, we say only 5, out of the 18 super speedways for a total of 12 wins. But his winning percentage, about 3/4 or around 75% on the short tracks. And in 1981, it was the same. So the short tracks are very critical in counting toward the points championships. A win here at North Wilkesboro counts the same number of points as a win at Daytona or Darlington or Talladega. And Waltrip has really made his way to the championship easier by doing so well on the short tracks.
A year ago in this race, it was a rather quick event. It was run in 2 hours, 33 minutes, and 37 seconds at an average speed of 97.646 miles an hour. And Darrell Waltrip had about a 1-car length victory over Terry Labonte. Finishing 3rd last year in this race was Dale Earnhardt, and 4th was Benny Parsons. Right now, Darrell Waltrip is holding the lead with Harry Gant running in 2nd place.
Well, the trick in Grand National racing is to stay on the lead lap. Those of you who were at the racetrack last week at Darlington when Harry Gant won, or perhaps saw reports and coverage of it, know that his comment was to be in a position to win late in the race. What he means by that is staying on the lead lap. There are a lot of tricks that you can pull, even though you're not the fastest car in the racetrack, by just driving consistently, driving steadily, ducking into the pits just at the right and opportune times, as we watch Waltrip and Gant put a lap on Dick Brooks. Lots of things that you can do to stay on the lap with the man who's out front. In this case, it continues to be Waltrip. We still have 9 of those folks who are on the lead lap, and not the least of which are Bonnet and Bobby Allison, Jeff Bodine, Terry Labonte, Richard Petty, Lake Speed, and Dave Marcus. Joe Ruttman was among them, but when the tire went down, he lost a lap. He only did lose 1 lap, however, so still with about 200 laps to go, Ruttman may well have a chance if he's in the right position with a little bit of lady luck on his side and the caution flags fly. Ruttman still might get that lap back.
It's a very bright, sunshiny day here at North Wilkesboro. The temperature is in the 60s. The only bad aspect of the weather this afternoon is a very strong northerly breeze gusting upwards of 20 miles an hour. And we've noticed a tremendous amount of debris, cups and papers and that kind of thing on the racetrack. So far, none of that has caused a problem with the race, but there is a lot of debris out there.
And the wind should not bother the performance of the race cars on a short track like this. Sure, it will buffet them around a little bit, but for the most part, we are down in a bowl. The back of the main grandstand is facing toward the west where the wind is coming from. So a lot of the wind is being knocked down by the grandstand, which is filled as usual at a Grand National race.
Richard Petty, car number 43. Richard from Randleman, North Carolina, started 23rd today and is currently in 7th position. And we certainly can't count out Richard Petty in the competition here this afternoon.
The 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Well, we have a car smoking very heavily going into turn number 2 as he came down the front straightaway. But that's Ronnie Hopkins, by the way. It looks like an engine let go on that car, and it's going to bring out our 6th caution period of the afternoon. Ronnie Hopkins from Greenville, South Carolina. Looks like he has a serious engine problem.
We were talking a little bit about the history of this racetrack. As we look at Ronnie Hopkins, that brings to mind another fact. His father owned the winning 1971 Camaro of Tiny Lund. Here's a replay on what happened with Hopkins. We're watching the leaders go through turns 1 and turn 2, and there's Ronnie Hopkins with a whole lot of steam and smoke and hot oil and hot water coming out the tailpipes, and most of it, of course, coating the under part of that race car. Didn't see too much oil coating the racetrack, but his father was the car owner for Tiny Lund when Lund victored a Grand National stock car race in a Camaro back in 1971. There was an overlap of the schedules of the Grand American cars and the Grand National cars, and allowed Tiny to enter that small, short wheelbase car, and he won. And here are all the leaders, headed by Neil Bonnet, at least at this very second, into the pits.
Also in, Jeff Bodine, Harry Gant, Darrell Waltrip, Bobby Allison. And we'll see which of those gets out first. Dick Brooks made a very quick pit stop and is back out there in competition. Terry Labonte also in. Looks like Harry Gant's going to lead the charge out of the pit area, followed by Darrell Waltrip. Jeff Bodine's car goes down off the jacks. He is back out there. Now there goes Bobby Allison, and finally Neil Bonnet. So those are the position that they will be running, as we do have a caution on the racetrack. There is Neil Bonnet in car number 75 among the leaders here at North Wilkesboro. Will return in a moment.
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Here's a reason for this caution period. Ronnie Hopkins losing an engine coming down the main straightaway, and Neil Bonnet taking some evasive action going to the outside, and so does Bobby Hillin in car number 8. So Ronnie Hopkins has pretty much oiled the racetrack, and the crews are out there trying to dry it up. Here is Jeff Bodine, the driver of the Gatorade Pontiac. We asked him about blown engines and what happens when one blows in front of you. What do you do?
Well, you know, you try to look far ahead so that you can see that kind of situation early, so you can react to it. You naturally, you know, you let off the gas and slow down. You look in your mirror, sort of at the same time, make sure nobody's going to run over you. If somebody is behind you, you put your arm up and you wave, trying to motion to them that you're going to slow down, and you point to where you think the problem might be in case they didn't see it. And of course, all the time, you know, you're looking at the racetrack to see if there's any oil debris on the track so you don't run over it. You know, in a fraction of a second, you do a whole lot out there. And but basically, you're all the time trying to look way ahead. So you see that situation in plenty of time that you can react, but a lot of times you can't, and a lot of times you can't react to anything. You're just involved, and of course that's when you get in big trouble.
And we anticipate the green flag in just a moment here as the pace car moves off the racetrack. Harry Gant steps on the accelerator. Here they come down the main straightaway. Back to racing. Gant is the leader. Darrell Waltrip in second position. Jeff Bodine, whom you just heard from, running in third place. Fourth belongs to Neil Bonnet. A lot of traffic out there in turn number 2.
Going to be slick for a couple of laps. A lot of quick dry was put down on the racetrack to absorb the moisture and oil left down by Ronnie Hopkins' engine. And one of the guys who got hung up in slower traffic on that first green flag lap was Jeff Bodine. No such problem for Gant, Waltrip, and right behind them, Bonnet.
And Bobby Allison also getting out of shape as we continue to watch the first and second place positions. Bobby Allison going high in turn number 2, had to get off the throttle. Here comes Harry Gant down the main straightaway, leading Darrell Waltrip. Behind him, Neil Bonnet. Fourth position belongs to Terry Labonte, and let us not count out the 5th place car, driven by Richard Petty. Petty has just kind of been hanging back there all afternoon. He started this race in 23rd position, but he is now all the way up to 5th.
You know, there used to be a saying on the trail that if Richard Petty was on the same lap with the leader at the halfway mark, look out for Richard. And hey, there he is, and there goes Waltrip as we're watching Petty. Petty continues to run in 5th, trying to gain ground. There's Labonte running 4th. 3rd is Bonnet, and there is a change for the lead as Darrell Waltrip stepped underneath Harry Gant going down the backstretch.
So Darrell Waltrip assuming the lead once again from Harry Gant. This looks like a replay of last weekend's race, although these two really weren't racing last weekend until the final few laps when Harry Gant was able to pass Darrell Waltrip. Well, our most recent caution brought about by the blown engine of Ronnie Hopkins. The driver is with Dick Berggren down to the pit area. Dick?
Ronnie, it looks like it's really uncorked on you.
Yes, it did. I don't know exactly what happened to it. I assume it come out the bottom because it blew up pretty bad and smoked a lot and got a lot of oil on the track. But we'll just have to try that much harder for next weekend, Mark.
Ronnie Hopkins, driver hailing from a nearby area here. As a matter of fact, from Greenville, South Carolina, in the Food Country USA Chevrolet. It's all over for the day for Ronnie. Darrell Waltrip and Harry Gant continue to battle nose to tail out there on this racetrack. For first position, they go into turn number 2 once again.
Well, you know, I'm surprised no race driver has ever put on his tombstone, wait till next week. If there's a plaintive cry of the sport of automobile racing, it's got to be wait till next week and the next time around. Everybody continues to be very optimistic in this sport. It's a very emotional sport. There's a lot of luck that is involved in the sport of automobile racing. Of course, performance has become just preeminent in the past decade, but everybody says wait till next week when they got a problem. The attitude always continues on the upswing.
4th, 5th, and 6th position right here as we observe that 8 cars are on the lead lap. 4th place, Terry Labonte. 5th place, Richard Petty. And 6th, Jeff Bodine. This is one of Terry Labonte's better performances of the 1983 racing season. Terry, of course, led the point standings for a good long time last year. His first win in the Southern 500 back in 1980. He was 3rd in the point standings last year and currently is 15th in the Winston Cup battle.
And Labonte was the youngest race driver ever to earn over $1 million. He was just 25 years of age when his career winnings soared over the $1 million mark. Originally out of Corpus Christi, Texas, Labonte didn't really plan completely in the early stages of his career to come Grand National Stock Car Racing, but he was hooked up with a team owner who decided after a little bit of success back home in Texas that they ought to go Grand National Stock Car Racing, and in his 5-year career 50% of the time, Terry Labonte has finished in the top 10. 72 out of 143 entries have been in the top 10. That is a record of consistency.
And the average speed at the end of 240 laps, 85.388 miles an hour. Labonte has 2 top 10 finishes this year, a 6th at Daytona and an 8th in Atlanta.
Terry, you might recall, was involved in a pretty serious crash the final race of the 1982 season. He had some serious facial cuts and also pretty bad damage to one of his legs when he hit a wall head-on at the road course at Riverside, California. Fortunately for him, if he had to crash, I guess it might as well be the last race of the year, and he had all winter to recuperate. Here's a team that many feel has been right on the edge of greatness for quite some time. Certainly nobody has had more second-place finishes in the past 2 seasons than Terry Labonte, and all of it's been taken in stride. The team has never been rattled by the situation where they've come home in a runner-up position. They've always given you the response. Well, I'll tell you, if we got second, there were a whole heck of a lot more folks who are finishing behind us, and they've been pretty satisfied with the performance since they've come to the Southeast, and well, they should. They have their first national sponsor ever in the history of this racing team this year, a name that's also very familiar to all ESPN viewers, despite whatever sport you're interested in. And Labonte again en route to another real rock-solid season in Grand National racing.
And right behind him, number 43, Richard Petty. Jeff Bodine goes to the inside off of turn number 4. Petty passes Tommy Gale to the outside, and Jeff Bodine goes to the inside. And Bobby Allison, because of all that, able to pick up a few car lengths, and he now moves in to challenge Jeff Bodine. Bodine looking to the inside of Richard Petty as they go into turn number 3, but Richard Petty able to hold on to that 3rd position, make that 4th position.
Now there is Bodine right in the midst of 270 Grand National wins. Jeff Bodine still looking for number 1, and the total for Petty and Allison together, 270. About a year or 2 ago, I suppose Bodine would have been a little bit in all of that situation, but no longer is one of the best teams and one of the fastest cars in the trail right now.
The estimated attendance here this afternoon, 26,500 race fans from North Carolina and surrounding vicinity have come to this racetrack for some exciting action, and that is a record attendance, 26,500.
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Welcome back to North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, the Northwestern Bank 400 for Grand National cars. Here are those that are out of the race: Ricky Rudd, Kyle Petty, Dale Earnhardt, and Tim Richmond among those who dropped out of competition early here this afternoon. Also, Mark Martin is out, so is Slick Johnson and Ronnie Hopkins. Well, Bobby Allison, while we were away, got a little bit out of shape in one of the turns, Larry.
Allison working on the inside of Richard Petty. They go into turn number 3. Richard poking his nose down on Bobby. I think they touched a little bit. The two of them both just overcooking her a little bit going into 3 and 4. These guys who have run side by side with each other many, many miles, thousands of miles in stock car racing. Certainly get through that, and it's just another day in the life of, so to speak.
Well, we'll name off the positions here as they go by us. Darrell Waltrip is the leader. 2nd position, Harry Gant. 3rd place is Neil Bonnet. 4th is Terry Labonte. 5th place is Jeff Bodine. 6th belongs to Bobby Allison, and 7th now is Richard Petty. Well, the crew chief on this car, the Skoll Bandit Buick, Travis Carter. Here he is with Dick Berggren.
Travis, what's your strategy from here?
Well, it looks like Darrell pretty well has everything in hand. Certainly going his way, so I think the best thing we can hope for is maybe we can get on a very, very good set of tires. We might have something like quite a bit at the end for him.
A lot of race left to go. There's a lot of strategy left to plan.
Well, that sounded almost like an admission that Waltrip has the advantage here.
Well, I think what Travis did say to us, Bob, is perhaps that they're not holding anything back, but there really are a lot of things that can happen, and that good set of tires can make a world of difference. Sometimes the team that is up front tries to go just a little faster than the last time, and sometimes you out-engineer yourself. Instead of going a little faster when you make those fine adjustments, you go just a little slower. And to be sure, anybody who's on the lead lap at this point, and we still have 8 cars, including, by the way, Lake Speed and the Uno number 1 still on the lead lap. All those guys have definitely got a legitimate shot.
After 260 laps, the average speed 86.782 miles an hour. Darrell Waltrip moves off turn number 4. Right behind him, Dick Brooks, whom he passed on the main straightaway a lap ago. Dick Brooks, a California driver, making a return to Grand National Racing this year. Now there is Joe Milliken in car number 35 that Darrell Waltrip passes on the backstretch.
This racetrack, as we told you earlier, is pretty rich in tradition as far as Grand National stock car racing goes. They have been racing here for well over 30 years, although the last 12 years, 4 people have dominated this race. Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, and Darrell Waltrip have won all of the races in the last 12 years except for one, which was won by Benny Parsons. 82, this race was won by Waltrip. 78, Waltrip. 77, Cale. 76, Cale. And 75, Richard Petty. Those are the recent winners of this race, and as we told you, the 4 drivers we just reeled off have won everything since 1972. The racetrack was asphalted back in 1957. The first winner of a race here at North Wilkesboro was Jack Smith. Prior to that, the place was dirt, and some of the most famous names in the history of this sport won when the track was dirt. People like the Flocks, all 3 of them, as a matter of fact. Herschel McGriff and even Dick Rathman, taking a hiatus from his racing up north in USAC in those days, was a winner here at North Wilkesboro back in the early 1950s.
Lenny Pond in car number 48 and D.K. Ulrich in car number 6 are doing battle out there on the racetrack. There they are, moving down the main straightaway, passing a slower car, that being Joe Milliken. Lenny Pond in car number 48 from Chester, Pennsylvania, the Palatine Auto Parts Chevy. And number 6, D.K. Ulrich from Waterbury, New Jersey, in the Ulrich Racing Buick.
And you know he got his number 6, don't you, Bob?
No.
You don't know that. Well, it's half of 99 inverted.
Of course.
Now the explanation. Last season when Tim Richmond, or rather 2 seasons ago, when Tim Richmond first hooked up with D.K. Ulrich, their assigned number was 99. There were some dollars available, so they had a lot of extra decals that they had purchased, assuming that they would have to paint the car several times during the next few seasons. Well, the number 99, of course, went when Tim Richmond left the team. DK was left looking for a number, and he discovered that the number 6, being a single digit, was available, and if you took 99 and cut it in half and inverted it, then you had a number 6. So DK was in business with numbers for, well, maybe the next 10 years. D.K. Ulrich from Harrisburg, North Carolina, at 38 years of age, is one of the consistent entries in Grand National stock car racing. He's only started 2 races this year. He finished 10th, his best in quite some time at Darlington just a week ago.
And Darrell Waltrip in turn number 4. Tommy Gale way up high in turn number 4. I don't know whether he was just giving room to Darrell Waltrip to go underneath him or whether he was momentarily out of control. But Tommy Gale able to hang on, and Darrell Waltrip moved by him nicely. So Waltrip races down the backstretch now. And the interval, we'll try to get an interval here. There is Tommy Gale in number 64. As Darrell Waltrip comes around this time, we'll try to find out exactly what the interval is between first and second. It's approximately 3 seconds. So a 3-second lead for Darrell Waltrip over the number 33 of Harry Gant. We'll be back with more auto racing as ESPN brings you live flag-to-flag coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400.
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Darrell Waltrip still has the lead with Harry Gant in second as we return to the race with only 50 laps to go.
As this race wears down toward its conclusion, one of the great concerns of the crew chiefs up and down pit road is, will the brakes last? This racetrack is not as tough on brakes as some of the tracks on the circuit, but that doesn't mean that it's easy either. And as proof of that, Richard Petty, believe it or not, has fully 2 calipers on each of the front wheels of his race car. And yesterday afternoon in the final practice, Lake Speed so stressed his brakes that the ducting to them caught fire.
Darrell Waltrip has passed in the past few minutes a 6th place car of Terry Labonte, so now there are only 5 cars on the lead lap as Waltrip moves to the inside of Dave Marcus in turn number 4. Those 5 cars on the lead lap: Darrell Waltrip, Harry Gant, Neil Bonnet, Bobby Allison, and Jeff Bodine.
Darrell Waltrip, who set a brand new record a year ago for most dollars ever in a single season. He won pretty darn close to $1 million, if you can believe that, in 1 year. $873,000. You used to be, and not until just recent times, that a racing driver would run his entire career maybe to hope to earn that amount of money. And Waltrip won 873 in just one season, 1982. He has led more than 190 laps here today at North Wilkesboro, and that is domination.
Well, here's a guy who looked very strong in the Daytona 500. Darrell Waltrip going to the outside to pass Dick Brooks, who ran up front with the leaders throughout that race and finished in 5th place. As a matter of fact, he has 3 top 10 finishes out of 5 races so far this year. He finished 8th in the Carolina 500 and 6th at Atlanta. As you can see, Dick Brooks, calling his home Porterville, California, has decided to come out of semi-retirement, I guess you could say, come back to the southeast and run with the NASCAR circuit.
And there's a controversy over Dick Brooks' point standings. His entry was late, and they're saying it was the fault of the U.S. Post Office, and had that entry been on time, and had he been credited for the points he earned at Daytona, he would have been tied with Bobby Allison for 3rd place in the point standings going into today.
And only 5 starts back in 1982 and 5 in 1981. And as you saw earlier, was the 1969 Rookie of the Year in this division. Dick Brooks, car number 90. Well, Darrell Waltrip continues to show the way here. And there are 45 laps to go. And perhaps a development concerning the Warner Hodgson car driven by Neil Bonnet. Let's check out that situation. Here's Dick.
Well, there sure is a development down here. The tires that are selected for the very last pit stop, those are the most important tires of the whole race, because those are the ones that take a competitor to the checkered flag. This organization had a set of scrub tires. Sometimes scrub tires are the fastest. They had them all set up, all 4 of them. They just changed their minds. They got 4 brand new ones. By the time the last stop comes around, however, who knows? They may go with scrubs as well. The last stop, very, very critical. Keep your eye on what these various teams do in it.
Here comes Darrell Waltrip crossing the start-finish line. We'll get the interval here. It is about, well, I missed it. It's about 5 seconds, I would guess. The advantage that Darrell Waltrip has over Harry Gant. He started in 10th position and currently is, of course, the leader. Here he comes off of the 4th turn, right behind Richard Petty. We'll get this interval now as he crosses the start-finish line. Out of turn number 4 comes Harry Gant, and it is 3.84 seconds. Well, the 1983 Winston Cup money winners, as we indicated, Cale Yarborough not here today and does not compete in all of the races on the NASCAR Winston Cup trail. However, he has won more money than anybody else so far, $165,285. Bill Elliott is second in the money winnings rather, at $99,400. Neil Bonnet is 3rd, Bobby Allison 4th, and Joe Rutman 5th in money won so far this year.
Waltrip looking invincible at this moment, and here's a guy, Jimmy Means, the Broadway Motors, and listen to this one, Raccoon Mountain Syrup Special, a name that has appeared on Jimmy Means' car the last couple of weeks. I've never had any Raccoon Mountain Syrup, but I'm certainly going to look for it on my local grocer's shelf in the near future. Jimmy Means is having one of his better seasons. This slender country gentleman who used to work for Smokey Yunick down in Daytona Beach, Florida, has been in the teens in terms of finishes 4 times this year, 12th at Darlington, 14th at Rockingham and Daytona, and 16th at Richmond. It even peaked in the top 10 in the points a couple of weeks ago, or rather about a month ago, when we televised the Rockingham race. He has dropped out of the top 10 in points, but running as consistently as ever, and maybe the leader of that second echelon of independent drivers who enters every single race in the Grand National Trail. He was ranked 11th in point standings a year ago. His best career finish, and 8th in the 1981 Mason-Dixon 500. Jimmy Means out of Huntsville, Alabama.
Jeff Bodine putting a lap on him in car number 88. There's a good tight shot of Jimmy, and now we focus on Jeff Bodine in car number 88, who is running in 5th place and the final car on the lead lap here at this point in the event. We have completed 368 laps. 368 laps have been completed. The leader continues to be Darrell Waltrip. 2nd place belongs to Harry Gant. In 3rd right now is Neil Bonnet, and 4th is Jeff Bodine. We'll be back with more of the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro as ESPN presents Auto Racing 83 live today.
The 1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Bob Jenkins, Larry Nuber, and Dick Berggren covering live for you today, flag to flag, the Northwestern Bank 400 from North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. No interruptions because of coverage of any other sporting event during our coverage of Auto Racing 83. We do it flag to flag for you. It's been a safe race to this point with less than 30 laps to go. No major accidents, no driver injuries. We have had 7 different leaders, and Darrell Waltrip is the leader at this point in car number 11. Here is Waltrip moving off of the 4th turn, crossing the start-finish line. We'll get an interval between himself and second place Harry Gant. Here comes Gant off the turn and stopping the clock at 6.7 seconds. Now that is almost twice as much of a lead as Waltrip had on Harry Gant not more than 10-15 laps ago.
Yeah, Darrell's done a pretty good job getting through traffic, and Harry's been in heavy traffic for quite some time.
Well, let's find out what the situation is regarding the Gant car. Travis Carter with Dick Berggren.
Can you guys run Darrell Waltrip down?
No, we don't have a chance. Our major concern is trying to hold off Bobby Allison so they can gain second place. So I don't know. Bobby's coming on pretty strong right now. We're having some problems with traffic. If he can stay down at the bottom of the group, he might hold it off.
That's a story from Harry Gant's pit.
So the Gant crew is more concerned with finishing in second position than winning this race because Bobby Allison is putting a challenge on second place Harry Gant. Waltrip, though, continues to move out ahead and is lengthening his lead on every lap.
With 20 laps to go, we, of course, will monitor the Waltrip situation as he looks invincible at this point. We'll follow the battle for you for second place between Gant and Allison. There are 5 cars in the lead lap, and here are the other survivors. A quick rundown. I hope your favorite is among them. Ron Bouchard, not necessarily, by the way, in their order that they're running in the race. Bouchard, Lake Speed, Dave Marcus, Richard Petty. Joe Milliken has survived this one. Bill Elliott has come back out. Of course, Bonnet, D.K. Ulrich, Buddy Arrington. Labonte continues to run in the top 10. Ronnie Thomas, another consistent finish for him. Dick Brooks, after some body damage early on. The number 48 car of James Hilton with Lenny Pond behind the wheel, running very consistently all day, staying out of the way. Joe Ruttman on the racetrack, Tommy Gale, Bobby Hillen Jr., and Jimmy Means. Those are the people who have survived this 400 lapper, at least with 20 laps to go.
And Darrell Waltrip going to the high side of Bobby Hillen to put another lap on him. Meanwhile, we have a change in second position. Bobby Allison got around Harry Gant in the 3rd turn a lap ago, and Bobby Allison has now moved into second. So the concern expressed by Travis Carter has come true. Bobby Allison has passed Harry Gant, and Allison is now in second. Allison now setting his sights on Darrell Waltrip about a half a lap away.
At one point I want to expound on, we were running down the list of people left. We mentioned Lenny Pond and used the term staying out of the way, and that was not derogatory at all. I've been watching Lenny very carefully, and he's been running a very gentleman race, and every time one of the leaders has moved up behind Lenny, it's been very evident where to go, high or low. A few laps ago, I saw him coming side by side with Bobby Allison. He had an opportunity to pinch Allison and catch him behind a slower car. Lenny Pond pulled way high on the racetrack and actually went to one of the foreign racing grooves to make sure that Bobby, among the leaders, had enough room to race.
Darrell Waltrip leading in the Pepsi Challenger Chevrolet, and if that car wins here today, it'll be the 3rd time that a Chevrolet has visited victory lane this year. A Pontiac has won on 2 different occasions. The STP car among them, and a Buick has also won 1 race this year. So Darrell Waltrip is leading. We're nearing the end of this event at North Wilkesboro, and we'll be back in a moment.
1983 Northwestern Bank 400 right here on ESPN Classic.
Will Darrell Waltrip bring home a victory for the first time in 1983 this afternoon? We'll know in less than 10 laps. Darrell Waltrip is the leader right now. His advantage about a half a lap over Bobby Allison. Here is Waltrip out of turn number 4, swinging high to go down the main straightaway. The Pepsi Challenger appears well on its way to victory. 6 laps remaining.
Waltrip has also been expert in getting his way through traffic here today. He really hasn't been hung up, I don't think, one time in working his way through slower cars. And we commented about how clean the race car looked about 250 laps ago. It still looks clean. Darrell's had a great day.
And here's the battle for second place, which really is not much of a battle anymore since Bobby Allison passed Harry Gant. A few laps ago, Allison has been able to maintain a several car length advantage on Harry Gant. So at this point, it is Darrell Waltrip, Bobby Allison, and Harry Gant, first, second, and third. Fourth place is Neil Bonnet, and fifth, Jeff Bodine. Those cars on the lead lap.
Allison certainly does look like he had something left here for the final stages of the race, and perhaps he waited just a little too long to make that move because he obviously has no chance of catching Darrell. He's at least a third of a lap behind, but he's really done a lot of hard work in the last 100 laps and has improved himself just by good hard race driving from fifth to second in about the last half hour here, and it's been a lot of hard work.
Once again, the battle for second position between Bobby Allison and Harry Gant as Darrell Waltrip crosses the start-finish line and completes lap number 397. Less than 3 laps to go now for Darrell Waltrip, and I have a feeling that there is going to be some celebration in that Waltrip pit or in victory lane with the Waltrip crew this afternoon. They have worked so hard this year, and it seems like some of the things that they have done have been wrong, but it may all come together here this afternoon as Waltrip appears on his way to victory.
Well, there'll be some chucking and jiving and Ingle Holler also tonight. That's just up the trail a piece from Junior's place, one of the legendary places in Grand National racing. Junior, of course, from rural Rhonda, which is just down the road a piece from here, and we're going to have some celebration there in the hills of North Carolina tonight.
And Darrell Waltrip receives the white flag. This is the last lap. Darrell Waltrip moving to the high side of Sterling Marlin from Columbia, Tennessee, one of the candidates for Rookie of the Year. And Darrell Waltrip now setting his car into turn number 3. Now turn number 4 off a bit onto the main straightaway. And Darrell Waltrip has done it. He has won his first Grand National race in 1983. Here's the race for second. Allison and Gant come down, and it's Bobby Allison staving off the challenge to finish second, and Harry Gant places third.
Congratulations, Darrell Waltrip. 4 in a row at Wilkesboro.
Well, I tell you, first of all, I want to thank the good Lord. Lord, I know I work on Sunday, but thank you for being with me today. And I want to thank Junior and all the crew for just what a fabulous job they did on this Pepsi Challenger. She run like a dadgum Timex.
Now, you folks always work hard on this car, but it seemed as though you put even extra effort into the car for this particular race.
Well, we didn't qualify very well, and we were really concerned, you know. We said, gosh darn, what's going on? Because we came with our same basic setup, but it worked in the race. It didn't qualify good, but it certainly did work in the race. And this car always runs well on the short tracks. I'm tickled to death to win here for Junior and Flossie and the crew. We really needed it.
It is a hometown win, is it not?
It really is.
There's a hometown kiss for his wife, for sure.
Yeah, it's a...
Okay, back upstairs to you, Bob.
Hi, everybody at home.
ESPN congratulates Darrell Waltrip for his victory here this afternoon at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, in the Northwestern Bank 400. Well, you just knew the string was going to end for Darrell, and it did.
It was inevitable, and it was a victory that the team really did need. I had the feeling all week, though, when I was here, Bob, that there was just too much talent on this team, driver, car owner, and crew, and they had focused so much attention at a place that they knew so well. You just had the feeling that it was going to come together in the near future. It was going to come together here. This team has done so well at this race, and they worked so hard this week that I think they probably even had a little something extra left when the checkered flag flew here today.
Well, here's a race summary. 7 leaders today, 13 lead changes, and we had 7 caution periods. And the unofficial results, the top 8, Darrell Waltrip the winner, Bobby Allison second, Harry Gant third, and Neil Bonnet finishes in 4th place. Finishing 5th, Jeff Bodine, car number 88. 6th was Terry Labonte in 44. Joe Ruttman was 7th in number 98. And Lake Speed unofficially finished in 8th position. For Larry Newber and Dick Berggren, this is Bob Jenkins. Thank you for joining us for ESPN's coverage of the Northwestern Bank 400, won by Darrell Waltrip.